What's up, Alabama fans, and welcome to the Bama Online show. I am BOL publisher Tim Watts, and with me, y'all might recognize my partner in crime, Andrew Bone, who is our recruiting editor and team contributor. Huge weekend last weekend with Alabama basketball and football with huge victories. Massive recruiting weekend. We're definitely going to dig deep into that. Courtney Morgan, Kalen DeBoer, the entire Alabama staff crushed the weekend visitors for the LSU game. Bama had a flip target on campus. Lead for multiple five stars in 2027 made some huge impacts. Elite basketball players showed up last weekend. So, really, a lot to talk about when it comes to recruiting, but also big wins for basketball and football and big games ahead for Alabama basketball and Alabama football. Andrew Bone, let's get started by talking about Alabama flip target. Samson Gash came for his official visit this weekend. What's the latest on him?
Yeah, Samson Gash is this is a guy that received an offer from Alabama back during the summer. Committed to Michigan State, home state school. Just 2 or 3 days after his offer from Alabama, and Alabama told him at the time, "Hey, we can't take you just yet. We want to watch you in the fall, but you have an offer, and we want to evaluate you during your senior season." So he went ahead and committed to Michigan State, but Alabama kept their word, continued to recruit him, continued to evaluate, and this season kind of stepped up his recruiting efforts with him, and he ends up scheduling the official visit for this past weekend. Came in town with his family. Had a lot of good things to say about the trip. Said walking into the stadium gave him goosebumps, and really likes the way that Alabama's offense is designed, and really what Alabama was able to do with its receivers, including Latzia Brooks. This is a guy that I think that they would really like to add. He has not said that he is about to flip or anything like that just yet, but we are less than 3 weeks until signing day. Michigan State's on a 6-game losing
Crazy.
streak.
3 weeks.
Michigan State's on a 6-game losing streak. Things aren't going too well.
Yeah, did you see? I hate to interrupt. Did you see their NCAA stuff
And they just,
yesterday?
yeah,
I mean, that's
got hit
not
from.
going well is an understatement.
Yes, so it would look like things are moving in the right direction with Samson Gash. Does he potentially make a decision you know in the very near future? We'll have to kind of wait and see. I don't think it's going to drag out until the early signing period. I think we're going to see something within the next week or so. One way or the other. Michigan State has a big game this weekend. Well, yeah, it's an unranked game, but still, Penn State. It's a program, so they're going to have Penn State in town this weekend. Does he end up showing up for that game? I think we're just kind of waiting to see. But I think all went well with Gash, and that's probably the main guy that we are really keeping an eye on right now as far as any flip targets or targets down this home stretch.
Yeah, Bama did as good job as they can. The hay's in the barn. You just see how it comes out. But this is a fast guy, an elite speed guy. Bama fans have been wondering. UA has 3 wide receiver commitments last night, middle of the night. Brian Williams, who's committed to Alabama but took a trip to South Florida, posted on Instagram he was selling his gloves from some of the places he visited. Alabama was one of them. So I think we're both in agreement, probably leaning towards Brian not being part of this class, and Gash would probably be the replacement. But that room's full. That room is really full. So, I mean, I think they'd be happy with 2 because obviously, and we don't talk about him enough probably because everybody commits in June and you forget about him. But at the time, Cedarian Morgan was a huge win, and he's put together huge back-to-back games. I think he has 4 touchdowns, over 300 yards the last 2 weeks. But obviously, a 5-star guy that could be featured as a freshman.
Yeah, no doubt. And we talked about it earlier this year. People thought we were crazy. We said that Alabama was, looking at signing, 2 wide receivers. They only signed 2 last year, but it was Latzia Brooks and Derek Meadows.
Yeah, pretty good.
They're really excited about the future with those 2 guys. And, going into this cycle, we felt like, from talking to different sources that, it was going to be 2 again, but they end up, having 3 at the end of the summer, with Cedarian Morgan, Owen Cabell, and Cobble, and also Brian Williams. So they, like I said, they continue to recruit Gash. You mentioned it; he's a fast guy, 10.41 in the 100 meters. I think they would really like to add a little bit more speed to this class. And Brian Williams, we've kind of hinted at it over the last few weeks. Ever since his trip Tuscaloosa for the Tennessee game that things look like he was probably heading elsewhere. Starting to look around. Hasn't made anything official just yet. Hasn't made any sort of announcement, regarding his future plans. But as we are starting to see, he's taking some visits, and
Yeah.
we think that whole process is going to play out eventually.
Yeah, no doubt. So before we get going, we want to remind y'all, if y'all like the content, we know you have a lot of options. We appreciate y'all tuning in to us. We have a lot of fun on the show. Hit that like button and subscribe. Let us know in the comments how you feel. We appreciate the feedback. And of course, you can find us at BOL. But Andrew, an interesting commitment. I don't think it hit me until late before the visit that JJ Finch hasn't visited Alabama. Defensive lineman from Indiana hadn't visited Alabama since he committed. So he came in for the LSU game. Ohio State has been pushing for him, wanted to bring him in for a visit. Alabama got him on campus. How do you think that went?
Yeah, it sounds like things went really well. I spoke to a source close to him, this week who said that the visit, went as good as it could have gone. They have a really good relationship with Courtney Morgan, Freddie Roach. Had a chance to spend some time with Coach DeBoer. I think one of the most important things about the trip was being able to spend time with several other Alabama commitments who were on campus. JJ took his official visit to Alabama in early June. So he was that first weekend. He didn't really have a chance to meet a lot of Alabama commitments. He's talked to them on social media and stuff like that, but his phone's been broken for the last couple of months. I don't know if he's even in any of these group texts with all these commitments. So being around those guys was really important. For him, for the coaches who wanted him to be around those guys throughout the weekend and, just get more comfortable, because there's obviously other schools that have continued to push. We've talked about it several times, Tim. He's a 3-star recruit, but he's certainly not treated like a 3-star recruit.
No, not at all.
By Alabama, by LSU, by Tennessee, by Ohio State, by Miami.
Michigan, Miami. Yeah, quite the list.
So a lot of top programs heavily pushing for him. He took a visit to Tennessee a few weeks ago for the Oklahoma game. Talked to the Tennessee reporters after that trip before he left town. Said that Tennessee was kind of the main school that he's still interested in, still talking to, but still committed to Alabama. Was going to take the official visit to Ohio State this weekend, but after coming back to Tuscaloosa, it's kind of shut things down as far as that trip. Not going to take the trip to Ohio State. Still in communication with Tennessee at this point. But after the trip to Alabama, I think that things have kind of solidified a little bit more. You got to wait.
He's a quiet guy. He's a quiet phone broke or not. I'm not sure that even mattered. It probably was 2 weeks before he realized it was broke.
He probably did a handful of interviews throughout the entire spring and summer.
Dude.
Not a guy that really likes to talk and communicate a whole lot with anybody, but yeah, just talking to some people very close to him back in Indiana, it seems like things are in a good spot with Alabama after the trip.
Let's talk about a 2027 5-star that I love. When I first looked at his film, Maxwell Hiller, I think he's a big-time prospect. He's over 6'6". He's over 300 pounds. Physically, he reminds me of Jackson last year. So when Alabama signed him as a senior, we saw that development there. And then to get to that point. Now, he's a guy we've got tremendous feedback on. Bama basketball fans will also be interested to know he has a brother in 2028 who's one of the top 3 players in the country. So very good bloodlines, big kids the Hiller family has, and the returns on his visit have Alabama in really good position right now. And again, granted, it's 2027. There's miles and miles to go, but Alabama's in a really good position with him right now.
No doubt. And, with 2027, a lot of people can look at it and say, they're still, over a year away from signing. Well, they're over a year away from signing, but, they're not a year away from, making their decisions. A lot of these decisions are going to happen in the spring and summer during official visits. And some of them are, going to make decisions before then. We can see January, February commitments, stuff like that. We've already seen, some guys commit to Alabama this fall in the 27 class. So it's already started. And, getting so many guys on campus this past weekend, especially in that 27 class, was very important. But Maxwell Hiller, making his second trip to Alabama. We knew that Alabama was in that top 5 heading into the visit. And they really did a great job with him and his family this past weekend. He visited on Saturday, but also got a chance to spend some time at the facility with the staff on Sunday. And he's certainly a top guy for them. He hasn't said when he's going to make a decision, but we've already seen our man Steve Wiltfong make a prediction for Maxwell Hiller to Alabama. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. See if something happens sooner rather than later. But as of right now, not really expecting an imminent commitment. But man, getting in lead position early on for one of the top offensive linemen in the country, certainly has to make Alabama fans excited.
And to get his brother Colton on campus. That's a win-win. You get two 5-star brothers coming in. That's certainly a chance to get them there early. On the same day, Alabama had a very impressive win over St. John. So, Andrew, we mentioned some of these guys will wait late, but we got a January 1 commitment coming up with Elijah Haven, number 1 quarterback in the nation, top 13 overall. Another visit to Alabama. And more feedback, Lyndon, the dad really says some positive things about Alabama. And it's not just about on the football field. I think the off the football field, we know what on football field means, but it's the off football field that keeps these guys, gets them to commit, keeps them through the portals and that stuff. That connections, relationships still matter. And it feels like Bama's building a great one with the nation's number 1 2027 quarterback.
Yeah, the schedule kind of worked out good for Alabama as far as having its 2 back-to-back home games against Tennessee and then against Oklahoma. So you're able to bring in a lot of top recruits, a lot of guys that want to be at those games. And we saw several that were in town for the Tennessee game and the LSU game, including Haven. So getting him back on campus certainly a big deal. And he came out after that trip, the Tennessee trip. Alabama was at the forefront. And that was even after Trent Seaborn committed. The Alabama staff talked to him and his family. Seaborn announced, I think, on a Monday. Haven was there on Saturday and Sunday. Coaching staff let him know, hey, Trent's committing to us. He's announcing. They said, didn't bother them one bit. I mean, they still came out and said that Alabama was at the top of the list, and still is after this past weekend. Said that your coaching staff certainly treats them like a top priority. They love the offense. Great for quarterbacks, and certainly have watched Ty Simpson's development this year and speaks volumes. So as of right now, still set to decide on January the 1st. So less than 2 months away from number 1 quarterback in the country announcing his decision. But Alabama, as of right now, sitting in a great spot.
We're going to switch a little bit. We'll go back to football, but also want to talk about basketball because it is the early signing period for basketball. We saw last night Terrace Bowie, a top 50 national guy who's committed to Alabama, has signed his letter of intent. I don't know. What is it? That's not letter of it. Is it a letter of intent still?
It's not letter of intent. They got away with that. It's just
he is signed
financial aid agreement or whatever it is, but it's not a national letter of intent.
So he signed with Alabama last night. We saw that on his Instagram story. They're still expecting Chris Washington, who's been committed for a while, to sign. We've have a prediction in for possible 5-star Caden Samuels to commit, but we want to talk about Caleb Holt, guy that's from the state of Alabama, showed up for this game. And it was pretty comical because he's showing up on Saturday, and the Alabama basketball team's in New York. So there was the whole, we had a lot of fans on the BOL roundtable showing the old Will Smith gif for him standing in the room alone. Like, obviously Alabama's going to be able to host him, but the Alabama plane was delayed after the big win over St. John's, but it didn't delay Preston Murphy, who made it back. And again, Caleb Holt's expected to wait. He's been a big-time prospect. We don't think he's signing early, but getting him on campus, Nate and them came and hosted him. He's number 1 nationally. I think he's number 1 shooting guard overall. I think he's number 2 in the composite, but he came in. So obviously a big week for Alabama. And before we continue, let me read you our one ad. The Game Time app. Football season's here. Bama has 2 home games left. That's it. 2 home games. It's crazy the season's at this point. Obviously, you can get tickets for road games, but if you need help getting those tickets, we're this late into the season. It's kind of hard to believe that the season, when you wait for it all year, you gripe all year, and then it just flies right by. But there's still times to get tickets. And honestly, the most difficult task in getting tickets is the stressful part of waiting in endless queues, filling out forms, prices that skyrocket at checkout. And one of the things we like with the Game Time app is that it's all in as you hit that button that you want to buy them. There's no hidden fees as you check out. You know exactly what you're paying up front. You often have people trying to get you. I mean, for some reason, I have people thinking I've got tickets in my back pocket for every game. We don't. But if you need help, you want to take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets, use Game Time. All you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account, redeem the code ON3 on 3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app. Go to that game that you're dying to see, because there's never been a better time, in my opinion, to watch college football or college basketball. Andrew, let's get back to recruiting before we move on to some of the team stuff. Who's a guy that stood out to you? The visit, the feedback, everything that you were curious about what their feedback would be. Hadn't been there often. Name a guy that you really felt that Bama made up some ground with this week.
I mean, obviously there was a very long list of five-star recruits
Yes.
who were on campus this past weekend. We talked about Hiller and Haven. Albert Simeon, who's another five-star offensive lineman, seemed to have a very good visit. They had a chance to talk to him. Texas A&M seemed to have the edge for him, for a while. But coming back to Tuscaloosa, which I believe was his third or fourth trip to Alabama, said that they really treated him like a top priority. Doesn't have a favorite right now, but Alabama certainly a top contender on his list. And you had some really high end edge targets, a couple five stars, DJ Jacobs, out of Georgia, and also Zyron Forstall, who's at IMG Academy. Those are two guys that Alabama was happy to get on campus, because that's going to be a top area for Alabama in the 27 class. I think that we're going to see two, maybe even three Wolves in 27, and going ahead and building those relationships with those guys is very, very important. And I think based on the comments that they had after their trip, certainly felt like Alabama treated them like a top priority. And so I would say those are all five-star recruits, and still a long way to go. But Alabama certainly did a great job with those guys this past weekend.
Yeah, and we said dozens of times, Christian Robinson does an incredible job of building relationships. He's just a very likable guy. He's got some pretty good football players too committed. I mean, he's the one that helped flip Xavier Griffin, dug in despite the USC. Justin Hill went into Ohio and pulled a guy out that was a top priority for Ohio State. So doing a good job there. Frederick Ards has had some good feedback. Anthony Sweeney, two guys that I consider top 50 prospects pretty comfortably. Athlete, and they fit the mold for what Alabama wants to do. I do think, Andrew, and I want your opinion on this. How much does Jean Pierre out of the blue start helping these guys to see exactly what Alabama wants out of that position? We're also seeing Justin Hill play as a true freshman and get a little bit better each game.
There's no doubt about that. I mean, I think anytime, especially last year, you didn't really have, high production, in the sack department after Q went down with his injury. I think that Yanze's performance this season certainly has excited a lot of kids, especially in that junior class that are watching him when they come on campus, and see the type of production that he's been able to have, and obviously we're excited to see it too, because this was a highly ranked kid coming out of high school, five-star recruit, and he's finally starting to hit his stride out there and being a disruptive force. So seeing that on the field for us is great, but especially for the recruits who are seeing it in the future, because now you can sell that. You can be the next Jean Pierre here at Alabama. We're going to turn you loose just like we turn him loose.
Yeah, and the one thing overall, I don't think we can talk about it enough. I mean, I think when the NIL first was announced and people thought everyone's just going someplace for money. And there are kids that are straight up saying, I'm going to the highest offer. No problems with that. Let them know up front. You make that business decision. Grown-ups make that decision every day in the workforce. But relationships matter. Courtney Morgan, guys behind the scene like Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Hodges, my bad. I just not going to be happy with that. But you got guys like that working behind the scene, Courtney in the front. And then when you hear, starting with Kalen DeBoer, every individual coach, the kids give such good feedback. And that's one thing. Kids are kind of, easy to relate to, but it's the parents, it's the grandparents, it's the mentors, it's the coaches, the grandparents that Alabama does a tremendous job of, like building that, that community feel where they can feel safe for their kids go there. I think it goes a huge way towards
And
landing these guys.
I'll piggyback off that, Tim. Yeah, I talked to Jared Doty's mother last week, and we
Yeah.
had a really good interview with her about his commitment to Alabama last month. Offensive lineman from Georgia. He was a kid that kind of blew up during his senior season with a lot of schools, offering him, including Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Florida State, Auburn, and talking to his mom last week. She mentioned the relationship that the coaching staff had with her son and how that played such an important role in his decision. They were always calling and checking up on him, but they were also calling and checking up on mom, having constant conversations with her, and not just the assistant coaches, but also Coach DeBoer. She said every single time they made it to campus, he would take personal time out of his day to spend time with them to help just build that relationship. She said, we went to some other schools this fall, and that didn't happen. We talked to the recruiting guys, talked to assistant coaches, but head coaches just never really had time for us set aside. But once we committed to Alabama, they started calling us and saying, "Hey, we still want you to come over for a visit. We want to build that relationship with you." And she said, you had your chance to do that when we came on campus for a visit, and too bad. So, and that's not just with Jared. I mean, that's with several of these other guys, and a big reason why we've seen this staff have so much success on the recruiting trail the last two cycles.
I think the staff, the way I would describe this coaching staff when it comes to recruiting, is genuine. I think they are what they are. I don't think there's a huge sales pitch. I mean, you've seen Kalen DeBoer talk a dozen times. He is who he is. And he is a guy that you never feel rushed. We've heard this a lot. You don't feel like he's looking through you to get to somebody else's hands to shake. He'll sit there and talk to you. That goes a long way. And you got to remember, you're not recruiting them to Alabama. You're recruiting them to Alabama to keep them in Alabama, because every January you got a 2-week window where those relationships do matter. People call it a NIL discount, and hopefully the rev share is going to even this out a little bit. But those relationships matter, especially when it comes to a freshman who's not playing a lot. That's where selling them and having them trust you. Andrew, let's talk a little bit about Oklahoma coming into town. We're just going to touch on this game. I want some of your thoughts. Charlie Potter and Blake Byler dropped a Oklahoma preview Thursday morning. Obviously, check that out if you want to get a more vivid breakdown. But Alabama, again, this schedule just keeps on giving on. I mean, you get another top 10-ish type team coming in to Tuscaloosa. I'm expecting the environment to be off the chain, 2:30 game. Really looking forward to it. Oklahoma brings so much history as we grew up watching football.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun for Alabama this season as far as fans going to Tuscaloosa, because you're seeing a lot of high profile games, primetime games, top 20 matchups. I think that this is certainly going to be one of those very tough games, because I would expect the Alabama fan base to be extremely loud, because this is an opponent that is going to challenge you. This is an opponent that has to win this game. Before it gets, without getting its third loss of the season, and which, really, diminishes potential playoff hopes. But Oklahoma has a very good team. They've got a great defense, got a great rush defense. Is Alabama going to be able to take advantage of that with its passing attack, which I believe it will. But I'm excited about going down there, seeing the game in person, seeing what Alabama's going to be able to do. And yeah, I mean, I think coming off that bye week, maybe they had a little bit of it was a tough stretch leading up to that bye week. And then you have the bye week, kind of take some time off, you kind of get back into it. And, 20-9 win against LSU, was it a blowout? Was it, perfect? No, but it was still a win. I think they're going to look a lot better this week against Oklahoma, because they know what they're up against. They know they're a team that's coming in to really challenge them, and I'm hoping to see them play their best football game of the season this weekend.
Human nature to me, I don't think it's intentional, but human nature to me tells me you can't get up for every game, right? So all these games Alabama's played, you run into an LSU team, I think was 5-3. They have no head coach. They had no athletic director when this started. They do now. I don't know who's left over there. So you're going through everything. It's constant drama with LSU. Even this week, where it was announced that they tried to say, hey, you weren't actually fired, Brian. You just thought you were fired. So I think the distraction probably affected Alabama a little bit, but I think we also aren't giving nearly enough credit to LSU's nasty defense. They got a good coach. They invested heavily in that portal. They got some really good football players. They played a pretty good football game, and then Bama missed a few opportunities. So I agree. I think getting up for Oklahoma, 2:30 crowd, homecoming, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hell of a homecoming. I mean, that used to be a school you had to like try to figure out what state it was in. Now you go like
Do you know the last year they lost the homecoming game?
probably your freshman year and you jinxed us.
My freshman year in college.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, freshman.
I just randomly guessed you earned it. I just randomly
Two
guessed
LSU. Two LSU.
That's crazy. That
And
is
then
crazy.
in my senior year of high school, they lost to the only road game that I went to my senior year in high school. I flew with some buddies of mine to Norman, Oklahoma, for the game in 2002, which Oklahoma was. I think they were top 3 team at the time.
Yeah, they were
Alabama.
good.
I don't even think Alabama was ranked, but they ended up. Alabama had the lead going into the fourth quarter, but ended up losing. But
It's just odd.
I don't remember the LSU game as much as I remember that trip to Norman.
It just seems like an odd homecoming game, but looking forward to it. The crowd's going to be great. Really, I mean, you get another home game, but this really is the cap to this home season. As you said, the Bama fans have been, last year they were cursed. This year they've been blessed with the home schedule. You got a lot of good games, a lot of exciting times and going on. And, we have Alabama basketball, Nate Oats. I'm not sure if Nate Oats is completely normal. So you come out and you play top 5 St. John's in Madison Square Garden, Rick Pitino. Your next game is number 1 Purdue at home. Have Illinois is going to be a top 10 type team coming up next week, I think it is. And Nate Oats just isn't scared of these big games, but Purdue, kind of a revenge game. You look at Alabama football, revenge type game against Oklahoma. That Oklahoma game cost them a chance at the playoffs. They can pay that back. And tonight, Alabama basketball will be playing a team that beat them last year in Purdue in a pretty nasty, hands-on, high kind of defensive game. But Purdue's really good. They're going to get a top player back, Trey Hoffman-Wren. Hadn't played the first 2 games, got it hurt in the exhibition. But if you're an Alabama fan, I'm not there sure. You go back to that office where Andy said, I wish there was a way for people to tell you when you're in the good old days when you're in them. Well, you're in the good old days when it comes to basketball right now. I'm not sure. I mean, Andrew, you followed basketball for a long time. I have too. This is easily the best recruiting, the product on the court, the excitement. I mean, everything about Alabama basketball is just 10 out of 10 for the fans right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the scheduling, every single year, which I think a lot of fans look at it, at the beginning of the year and think it's going to be a tough stretch. It's going to be, rough, but it's going to make us better. We're going to get good as the season progresses. But then you start seeing them win these really big games, and you are a consistent top program in the country where you can go on the road and win big matchups. This is going to be a fun one tonight against Purdue, and you win the game at Madison Square Garden against St. John's, and
that was crazy. That's such a beautiful, yeah.
But I told somebody before the game, I said, I don't. Somebody asked, "Do you think Alabama's going to win?" I said, "I have no idea. I think Alabama's got a young team. They're going to get better. We're going to know exactly who they are. Kind of after this game, what all they need to work on. Obviously, there's still a lot to work on, but going up there and getting that huge win was great. And now you get Purdue. You're not coming home to play some unranked team that
Yeah.
potentially upsets you and you don't get up for, you can get up for this game, and you better be up for this game because it's going to be a dogfight. So I'm really looking forward to it, and it's going to be a fun night to watch a game.
Yeah.
And hopefully they win, but yeah, I mean,
Nate Oates schedules for March. Nate
yeah,
Oates is trying to win in March. He's trying to win the SEC NCAA tournament. That's why he challenges you now. And the thing about it is you get to see where you're at. What's this team about? Where's the weaknesses? Front court struggle with St. John's. St. John's has a great front court, by the way. So it's not, competition matters. That's something you got to factor in. Everything's not apples to apples. They had a really good front court. But yeah, excited. If you're an Alabama fan, I'm not sure what else you can want out of your basketball and your football programs right now. But we appreciate you as always. I'm gonna let Andrew get us out of here, but I want you to know we appreciate you taking the time to watch the show or listen to the show. Also, if you're on BamaOnLine.com, shout out to everybody, especially if you're on the round table, giving us grief and having fun. We have a ton of fun on our message board. It's a fantastic Alabama community, and we've went through a lot together. Andrew, walk us out of here.
Yeah, with the BOL message board roundtable, people just think of a message board, but it's more of a community. It's basically a live chat on so many different topics every single day. You always kind of find one that you want to get involved in, and several. So come check us out at BamaOnLine.com. We got a lot of great coverage leading up to the Oklahoma game, obviously afterwards, but also we cover basketball as well as anyone. So we will have a ton of basketball coverage from the game against Purdue. A ton of recruiting stuff happening right now with 3 weeks left until let's say National Signing Day, the early signing period. So come check us out, see what all we've got over there, read the content, but more importantly, come be a part of our community, hang out with us on the BOL Roundtable each and every day. You hear our voice here for 30 minutes each week, but you get to talk to us every single day throughout the entire day and evening on BOL. So come check us out.
Thank y'all, and everybody have a good weekend. Roll Tide.